How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. I'm happy to have had you on.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. I'm glad I figured it out.
Uh, I have a lot of questions. A lot of people have questions for you, but we've met twice before in person, and I kind of wanted to get to know about you and let people know from your experience and how you got into coaching and what things that you have learned from in the past that you see now that can help people in their careers as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got into coaching. Gosh, I was always a fan of bodybuilding. I mean, since the 80s, because, I'm a little older. I saw the very first bodybuilders, Rachel McLish, the first, Miss Olympia. I just got really inspired. And it took me a long time to actually step on stage. My life took me different directions. And, I didn't start really getting serious about competing until my late 30s. And then competed and turned pro in 2011, did the Olympia 2011, 2012. And then after that, I just had a lot of women coming to me interested in coaching, especially I think because I was over 40 and, had some success. And, I just fell in love with coaching. I fell in love with helping women achieve their dreams. And I am all about education. So, kind of dived into my holistic nutrition, PhD and, continuing education. I actually had already, you know, um, done a master's in kinesiology. So, I mean, this has always been a love and an interest for me. I mean, really, I truly didn't fully intend on it becoming what it's become today. Initially, I just love bodybuilding. I love working with women. Um, and so here we are.
So I actually saw something before. You said you had an MBA. You have a PhD, so you're not Dr. Debernard?
No, so I didn't finish my thesis.
Oh,
So I did all my coursework and then didn't finish my thesis
oh,
because I became so busy, working with athletes and everything else. So it was
and
a lot of
that took
fun.
over.
Yeah, yeah. So I ended up just diving into that.
Okay. You actually taught if I recall, I don't know if this is I just saw something. I don't know where it was. And I'm sorry if you don't, I hope you don't look at it like how does he know this? You said you were teaching as an MBA?
Yeah, I taught in the MBA program at Golden Gate University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I taught marketing management and internet marketing, which is kind of funny because the internet back then and what it is today is so different. It was really kind of like where companies were just first starting discovering being able to put websites on and stuff. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah, I actually the corporation that I was part of at the time became my master's thesis when I completed my MBA, and the company became very successful. We sold to a Fortune 50, and I had gotten my degree from Golden Gate, and they asked me to come back as an adjunct professor. So I was still working full time in corporate, but then I was teaching some classes in the evenings for
Oh,
it was an executive MBA program.
that's awesome. So
Yeah.
with education, me being an exercise science major and also Jordan Brandon and Drew Brandon as well. Do you feel like, and this is a good question I have to ask, do you feel like having the degree means something? Like it helps with the background? Because now it's like anybody can become a coach. Like I look good, they post on social media. What makes, in your opinion, a more reputable coach? Is it degrees? Is it what they've accomplished on the stage? What do you, in your opinion, what do you believe makes a coach reputable?
That's a great question. I mean, I think there's a lot of amazing coaches out there that have maybe never even competed. I mean, in every sport, some of the best coaches aren't necessarily the best athletes. So I don't think that that's necessarily a prerequisite to being a great coach. I think having a thirst for knowledge and continuing to learn and grow constantly, because, I think it's very easy to kind of go into that mindset of good enough and, I know enough or whatever. To me,
Mhm.
like, especially for me, I want to surround myself with people smarter than me. I want to surround myself with people I can constantly learn from. So, I do think that educational piece gives you that opportunity to surround yourself with, with people that you can continue to learn and grow from. So that's why I've always been such a big fan of education. But again, you have people with many, many degrees that aren't great coaches either. So,
Yeah.
so then there's the real world experience. I think the interpersonal skills are super important, and just the care and the dedication, for me, I feel like one of my strong points as a coach is listening to my clients and being willing to meet them where they're at, being willing to create something that's going to work for them over the long term, prioritizing their health, continuing to learn how to read blood work, how to, deal with things as they come up, all of it's kind of this conglomeration of all of these different things. I don't think anything's necessarily more important than the other. Without the technical knowledge, you're not going to do well. But then without the, care and compassion and, willingness to communicate and meet people where they're at, then you're not going to get the most out of people either. You might over the short run, but then you're going to burn them out and,
Yeah.
get stuck at some point. So I think it's kind of like all of the things mixed together.
Yeah. So now these days with so many divisions, do you feel like now if let's just say an athlete comes to you or like any new athlete, what should they look for in a coach? Should they go for a coach that's like specialized in that division, someone who's more versatile? Like should they be bikini only? What do you feel like newer competitors or someone seeking coach should look for when they fill out like a when they fill out an application for coaching?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think part of it depends on what you want or what you're looking for and what works for you as an individual. And sometimes there's some trial and error with that, which, I know sometimes people, knock people that have changed coaches and things like that. But I think sometimes you've got to try a couple different styles before maybe you find the thing that resonates the most for you. I'll say for me personally, I don't coach every division because I feel like to really hone my skill and hone my eye, I can't do that for every division. So, right now for me, it's obviously I've been primarily bikini. Now I'm doing actually quite a bit of fit model, and I'm really excited about the fit model division. I think it's going to be a
Yeah.
lot of fun. And then I do some wellness, and I actually really love wellness too. But again, it's one of those things where you know focus on a small enough you know area, and then you're going to become much better at it. And I do see sometimes people will go with a coach that coaches every division, and maybe they're a great coach and they do a great job maybe building them or cutting them or whatever, but they're not quite nailing the just right on the head of exactly what the judges want to see in terms of maybe conditioning or stage presence, posing, like all those little details need to come together for, that's going to be different from division to
Yeah.
division. So, like you'll see somebody who does maybe a lot of bodybuilding and they'll bring in a bikini athlete just shredded, which would be amazing for bodybuilding, but, doesn't really.
Not for bikini criteria.
Exactly. So, but I mean, there are others that do cross over just fine. So, I think doing your research, seeing does that coach other athletes that have accomplished what I want to accomplish? Have they been successful in that? I think that's really important.
All right. That's really good. I really like that. So when you competed as a pro, back in the day it was just, men's, women's bodybuilding, fitness, and figure. When you were coming up and you did your first Olympia, it was when I believe Nicole and Aaron Stern were winning.
Yep.
At what point did you kind of see and go, it's kind of getting out of hand, and you felt like you didn't want to go there. You didn't want to go push that envelope too far.
Well, for me personally, I didn't really retire from competing because of that. It's actually funny because when I was competing, I always got the feedback I was too muscular, I was too lean, I was too hard, I was too, which is really funny because now if you put me on stage with the current figure athletes, I definitely would not be to any of those things. So, I mean, for me, because of the age I was when I started competing, I kind of felt like, well, I want to compete till I'm about 45. And then, that just was in my head. And then by the time I got to 45, maybe I would have kept going, but by then I was coaching so many athletes. The last show I did, after the Olympia, the second Olympia I did, I was going to retire. And then a couple years later, I was like, I actually had never done a prep with macros before, and I had started really utilizing macros in coaching and really loving it. So I'm like, I want to compete and experience this because I never got to do it. So I did a couple shows, and that was just that was good. And it was kind of cool because my very last show was the Tahoe show, and I'll never forget it. It was my favorite package I ever put on stage. I came in full. I mean, when I won the Cal State, I was 121 pounds. When I did the Tahoe show, I was like 131 pounds. So I actually just I didn't deplete myself down because I was always too muscular. So I just really filled out and like kind of brought what I really liked to stage. Um, so that was my last show and I was good with that, but even with those two shows, my athletes were like, it just didn't feel the same. Like you're still there for us and everything, but because you were so focused on your prep, it just wasn't the same. And for me, I
Yeah.
was like, well, I have to pick. I want to either be the best coach or the best athlete I can be. And for me, and I have a lot of coaches that are able to juggle that really well. But for me at the time, it just was like, no, I'm going full into coaching.
Yeah. I will say this. I did see the Olympic pictures. I don't know if you want me to pull it up or not, but you actually look really good back then. I was like, wow, like that's impressive. And I was like,
And
you
you
probably would have been in bikini today. Do you think you would have been in bikini today with that kind
Oh,
of look?
for sure, for sure. I mean, I would definitely say with the size and the conditioning and everything I was bringing back then would be perfect for bikini today.
Let me try to get this up. But I was gonna say, like, I know bikini started about in 2010. Did you see it as kind of like an ad division, or like you kind of wanted to see how it went off?
Well, oh, you mean when I was competing? Because when I was competing, so I want to say bikini started. I remember USA's when I won my pro card at the USA's. We did have, I think it was might have been the first year of bikini or the second year of bikini. So, I mean, I started coaching bikini like right away, which is one of the reasons I'm excited about Fit Model because I was coaching bikini when it first started. So the pose that they do is their front pose, I was teaching that back then. And so, it's kind of an easy transition for me to go kind of right into coaching Fit Model as well. And, I think it's a fun division, but yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, you look pretty good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because I feel like I didn't bring my best to the Olympia, which is either of the times that I stepped on stage at the Olympia, they weren't my favorite looks or packages. I think I competed a bit too much. I had an idea in my mind that I was running out of time because of my age. So I just really pushed myself to keep competing. I'm like, I'm getting it all in while I can kind of thing. If I could tell myself back then something, I would have said, just slow down, enjoy the process. Like, once you qualify, shut it down, like bring your best to the Olympia. I just would wear myself out just right into the Olympia every time. But it was fun. It was fun. I don't regret any of it. But, hindsight's 2020, and now I get to help my athletes make better decisions.
All right. So you turn pro late versus a lot of people I think average age of someone turning pro is like early 20s, 25. I think now these days, because of the requirements for the divisions, there are more women turning pro like late 20s, early mid 30s. Do you feel like that's just a more maturity thing? Like they kind of know what they want, or what is your take on that?
Well, I
Because
think also
yeah,
it depends on the division because, certainly as bikini has continued to grow in terms of, they have a bit more muscle, you need more time. I think that's part of it. And I do think, we'll see in Fit Model probably a lot younger women just because, they don't have to have that same level of development, you know.
yeah. Let's see. So you have a lot of athletes, and I actually kind of wrote this down. You had about 9 in the Olympia last year, and 6 out of 15 of them were in the top 15. And you had, and now currently you have 8 qualified, and half of them are going to their first Olympia. How hard is it to like have?
9 qualified now. We just
You have 9?
9 qualified now. Yeah. Yeah. So I qualified Emmy at the San Diego
Oh
Pro.
yeah, Emmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's see. You have Deanna, Yulia, Jordan, Adair, Lacey, Taylor, Nay, and Emmy. And half of them are going to be going to their first Olympia. So with your top girls like Amy, Jordan, Alice, Allie, how hard is it to prep and peak all those athletes at the same time for a big show?
It's hard. I mean, it's only hard from I think more of an emotional standpoint than anything because I want the best for each and every one of them. And
And
so
Maria as well.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
like for me it's really important that I'm focusing on each individual separately. What is this person's best and then it's up to the judges at that point. I mean, this coming weekend at Charlotte, I have I think 9 pros competing, 10. And, several in the Masters, so we're hoping for a Masters qualification. I have 4 going to the Masters Olympia so far.
Oh, wow.
And then I have Maria and Jordan, and then quite a few newer pros doing the Charlotte Pro this weekend. So it's always very challenging, but it's that attitude of like, our focus is to bring you in your best on this day, and then I'm going to let the judges do the hard work. I do not envy them at all, and I feel like bikini's just getting more and more competitive. I looked at the list, it just came out today, and I'm like, oh my gosh, these judges are going to have their, work cut out for them. But I mean, I think the hardest part for me is just there can only be one winner on any one day, and I know I'm going to have some people that are super happy and excited, and I'm going to have some people that are going to be disappointed because, I mean, there's only, you know,
One win. There's 28 girls in the lineup that I saw. I was like, wow.
I know,
Uh,
I know, I know. We have, and so oh no, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I think we have a third of the athletes in the show, but which is kind of fun and exciting. I have some new athletes that I'm excited to put on stage that have, either doing their pro debut or it's our first show together. So I'm really excited. It's always fun. It's so much fun. And then
yeah.
of course, Maria and Jordan, who, just came off of the Arnold, and Maria is actually not qualified yet for this Olympia. So, that's what we're doing there.
Yeah. So you actually kind of touched on it briefly, and it was actually one of my things here. So what is for now in the amateurs, what is it so difficult right now you feel in amateurs that when someone turns pro and now they're in the pro league and they're trying to win a pro show, what do you feel like is very difficult that you see now, like going from the NPC to the IFBB? Is it muscle density? Is it conditioning? Like specifically in bikini, what do you think is so difficult for when they go from, say they won everything in the NPC and then they're in the pro league, they're at the bottom of the total.
It's
What do you
actually
feel is very difficult?
Yeah, it's actually funny you asked this because we had our podcast go live today where we talked to Alice Rocha. And
Yeah.
she was one of those who she won her first, basically, I think it was her second show. She won the overall. Her first national show, she won the overall, and then got to the pro stage. And it was like, oh, okay, this is a whole different league, And I do think it can be harder for athletes that get there quicker because they don't really have the chance to hone their skills. A lot of it is mindset, truly. I mean, you go from, well, I even remember going from like regional shows where I was killing at the regional level, and I got to nationals. I was like last call outs. My first national show, I'll never forget. I'm at USA's, and I had like 40 plus girls in my class. So it was a long time till they got to my call out, and I'm standing back there going, "Hi guys, you forgot about me. I'm over here." 2 years later, I went back and won it, so I had to bust my butt. But for me, it made me a better pro. So I never placed out of the top 5 as a pro until my last 2 shows after that second Olympia. But I do think I did so many shows as an amateur, and that prepared me. And I was older too, so I had a little bit more muscle density. I think sometimes when the younger athletes get that pro card quickly, it could be a muscle density thing. It could be just a polish, a confidence thing. I mean, everything counts on that pro stage because everyone looks so amazing. It's like what draws your eye that particular day, So you got to have the muscle, the conditioning, the poise, the confidence, all the things, the Olympia stage. We look up there and there's 50 plus amazing athletes. They all look incredible. I mean, from first to last place, they all look incredible. So it
Yeah.
starts to become splitting hairs at that point. So I feel like mindset is so crucial. You have to have resilience. You have to be ready to fall and to fail. You're not going to win every time.
Yeah. That's so totally true. Um, let's see. So touching on that. So instant gratification versus delayed gratification. I think I did see that little brief with Alice, like people like, I want to win now. I want to turn pro now, that whole, whatever it takes to win. How do you go about telling an athlete like one show at a time, one day at a time? Cause you hear this younger generation now, unfortunately, they're like, I don't know how many coaching consults you've gotten. I've gotten this, but first time even speaking to a new athlete and I open it up and I call them, what's the first question? What drug should I take? And I'm like, okay, first, it's you even said this, and God bless you when you said this. You said it's bodybuilding, not body built. You have to have built a physique for months, years to even get to that level before you even step onto a national stage. So, what is something you would tell someone that wants an instant gratification, like, I'm 23, I want to turn pro, I want to be a pro, I want to be an Olympian? What is something that you kind of do to, like, okay, first, where do you go about this in like any assessment?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I have people where I've gotten on a consult and they're like, "How do I get to the Olympia?" I'm like, "You haven't even started working out yet." There are layers to this. I mean, people are working for years upon years upon years, and of course, there's those. I mean, I actually just started working with this athlete. She's fully natural, but has been training hard for a long time. I mean, I saw this girl. I'm like, I'm putting her in natural figure. She's incredible. She's going to be a showstopper. But I mean, if you're not somebody who's already been putting your time in the gym, like you're right. Like there's the time to build, but there's also the time to build habits, to build a lifestyle, because it's not just 12. I think people think, oh, it's 12 weeks. I'm going to get on stage. I'm going to go win. It's a lot more than that,
Yeah.
and if you're not building those habits, if you're not building a lifestyle, then you're just going to crash after your first show. You're not going to be able to continue to move on and to progress. So I definitely feel like, putting all of those, you have to be willing to really take this on as a full on lifestyle. I don't even like on and off season. No, there's no such thing. Like, yeah, we might be in prep or we might be in an improvement season, but you're not turning the switch on and off. Like, this is something that has to become part of your life if you want to go to that level. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
if you're just bucket listing, you want to get on stage, that's a whole different thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. You want to see if you like it. I actually would rather somebody go into it like, I'm going to do a show and see if I like it and then take it from there, versus like trying to jump over several hurdles and how do I get to the Olympia, and you haven't even done true novice yet. So
Because we see that, especially with influencers, like they'll go from first show true novice, they win the overall, within 1-2 months they're at junior nats, they're at they're at USA's, and they get their pro card there. And it's kind of like someone sees that, like, they got it too fast. Well, there's a lot of components to that. There's the genetic part, there's how many years have they been training, are they a previous athlete, there's a lot of things to that. But someone will see that and then they'll go, they got it quickly, I need to get like that too. So how do you go about telling an athlete that everyone's different and everyone's individualized?
I mean, it's really just that, is like, just telling people, the athletes. Yeah, I made this comment on one of Jordan's posts that she just did where she was showing all of her growth. I'm like, they
Yeah.
didn't just roll out of bed one day and look like this. This was a lot of time, energy, and effort that went into building this, and that's what I tell them. Like, if you want to be great, you got to be ready and willing to put in the time, energy, and effort, and you have to be patient. It's the grind, it's the consistency, it's the day to day. That's what's going to get you there. So, I mean, it's really just encouraging that.
All right. So now this is a lot of coaching questions right here. So
That's
a
okay.
lot of people have a lot of good questions.
I love it.
Okay. What is the optimal time to go into reverse to bring back hormone levels?
Is well, this is a layered question, because it's what's interesting is I feel like sometimes people say, somebody comes to me and they've never even competed before, but the metabolism's tanked, labs aren't great, then we got some work to do first. I mean, this might mean, starting a reverse right off the bat before even competing, like setting that groundwork, before ever even starting to do a prep, but let's say somebody did just come off of a show, then I mean, the reverse should start right away, you know. Of course, I let people go and have a meal that evening, enjoy themselves. I always encourage people, watch out for sugar, kind of give them some guidelines. But, I do my best to really prepare people, coming out of the show, so that then we can just jump right into our reverse, get up to maintenance as quickly as possible so people aren't super uncomfortable and struggling too much. But you want to continue to build that metabolism. I mean, I put people, I mean, I wish I knew when I competed what I know now, because, I'm able to really reverse people from show to show. Usually once we are done with their first show, they're eating more and more and more, as time goes on. I mean, Maria at 4'11" is eating 2,300, 2,400 calories, going from Arnold to, and I don't think she ever dropped below 2,000 calories after the Olympia. We were able to really reverse her the entire way to the Arnold, and then from the Arnold on to, and so that's pretty common with the way I'm able to do it, but it does require the athlete to be consistent. It's when the athlete goes bonkers and just starts binging and doing all these other things. Now you're in a whole different realm. Now you've got to kind of get things back under control, get back to maintenance, and then you can reverse again. So I don't know. I know it's a long answer.
That's really good. No, it's good for educating our audience as well.
I've had people come to me that are, significantly overweight, especially when I first started and I was doing a lot more lifestyle transformations and things like that. And what I would do is just put them in a deficit, that wasn't anything crazy, but something where they could drop at least a half a pound to a pound a week. And then I would just reverse them super slowly. And I had people lose 40, 50 pounds doing a reverse, and so by the time they were done, now they're eating, over 2,000, maybe 23 to 2,500 calories. They've lost a whole bunch of weight, and then they can either just go into maintenance mode at that point, or sometimes at that point they're like, okay, now I want to compete.
Yeah, that's really good, and that's a really good take. I really appreciate you for that answer. So your macro based nutrition. When do you change food sources? How many weeks out? How many days out? So, like, for instance, a protein source, a carb source, fat source. Do you keep it consistent, or do you change it by week or by days?
Yeah, I mean, so my athletes are straight macros based, meaning they can change as frequently as they like. But the conversations really are more about, being reasonable. 80% whole natural foods, 20% if you want to have something a little fun in there, that's fine. Everybody's a little bit different. Some of the things that we'll discuss is digestion. I mean, I have some people that have an iron stomach and literally can eat anything with no problems. I have other people, if they eat certain foods, whether it be gluten or dairy or artificials or things like that, then, they're going to have bloating, they're going to have all these other issues. So at that point, we shouldn't be eating them. Like if the body's not responding well to them, like let's make sure our digestion is on point. I will recommend a GI map if we're really struggling with something like that. But as long as we're getting results, I'm fine with them, changing things up. I actually encourage it. I mean, I've seen people create intolerances because they're only eating 5 foods for months upon end, and then they bring back something and now they're struggling, their digestive enzymes are off and things like that. So I like when people add a little bit of variety, at least to their food. And at the same time, we're creatures of habit. Let's not make it overcomplicated to where it just becomes too hard to follow.
Yeah, I really like that one. Okay. Do you believe in carb cycling, or is it a nuance for body comp?
I do like the carb cycle. It's actually funny because I just had one of my clients ask me, why are we carb cycling? And there's a lot of different reasons. I mean, it's not necessary. You can get results without carb cycling. If I have somebody who really doesn't like it, then we don't have to do it. But I mean, there are a lot of benefits to it. Even just the fact that you're getting a little bit more variety. When I have low carb days, they get a little bit more protein and fats. On their high carb days, a little bit less. So it kind of gives them a little bit more variety and flexibility in what they're eating. It also helps. It helps just keep that metabolism going. It just kind of depends on the person, but more than not, I am carb cycling when I'm cutting.
Okay. All right. Ways to come in full but not watery. Do you reduce or increase sodium intake, or manipulate carbs the most?
So first of all, the key is you have to be conditioned. I think a lot of times when people think they're watery, they're not lean enough. It's fat. It's not water. I mean, granted, sometimes it is water, but most of the time, if you're lean enough, that's not going to be an issue. I very rarely cut water at all. And if I cut water, it would be like they're drinking 5 or 6 liters and I take them down to 4 or 3 on show day. That would be my cutting water. I don't really use diuretics. I mean, if somebody were going to start their cycle or something, then maybe we might have to, because that's, you know, kind of a different beast. My athletes very rarely lose their cycles, very rarely. So I do have to deal with that. So it's good and bad. It's good because they're healthy. It's bad because sometimes I got to deal with it during peak week or on show day. But as far as peak week, I manipulate everything. I typically keep water pretty consistent. And I'm typically, everybody's a little different, but I'm typically increasing sodium as we go deeper into the week and increasing carbs, purpose being as I want to shuttle those nutrients into the muscle. So I'm filling that muscle out. If I have a client that's starting to look a little bit too hard, or they're striating or something like that, then I'll actually lean a little bit heavier on fats. I'm also always thinking about digestion. So some people don't digest carbs as well or fats as well. I don't want them to look bloated. So, I mean, there's kind of a whole little variety of tools in my toolbox that I'm pulling up in different situations and with different athletes, just figuring out like what works best for them. But that's the most common scenario.
That actually follows up to another question. I'm hoping I've never had this one, but an athlete has their period on show day or peak week. What do you do before they step on stage?
Oh my God.
So it happens on show day or during peak, show day or during peak week.
I literally had it happen about 5 times this last year where somebody started on show day. And it's actually funny. We talked about this on one of the episodes I did with Amy, because it happened to her on one of her show days, and she's the best. She just came in the room. She's like, "This is awesome. Now I get to experience what it's like to do this," you know, which was really cool. I mean, just
wait,
yeah.
Wait, she had her period on show day and she won?
Yeah.
That's a first.
Oh no, I've had people win mini shows with their period on show day.
The most common I hear, we're going to talk about, I can't wait to hear your response about this, but most common I hear is they had their period, they're going to go on, and in the end, at the end result, they're getting 4th or 5th. I've never heard someone win, but that happened to Amy?
Yeah.
That's wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it was her Legion's win when it happened. Yeah, I mean, I've had people many, many times, you know, win shows, place really well. Starting your period does not have to mean that your physique is destroyed by any means. I mean, as a matter of fact, you know, typically when you're lean like that, even if you start a period, they're usually not as symptomatic because they're so lean. So it's usually not a really big deal. But I do have some athletes. I actually have one athlete that when she gets her cycle, she ends up vomiting and headaches and like the whole thing. You know, some people have worse things than others. And she still did incredibly well. I'm like, we can't keep food down. You can't throw up anymore. So, you know, everybody is so different. Some people, they have their cycle and it doesn't change their physique at all. You know, some people, maybe they're holding a little bit of water, so we cut water a little bit, or, you know, or if we need to, we'll use a diuretic, you know. But again, that's pretty rare when we have to do that. You know, it's really just keeping a close eye on it. Maybe we don't push as much food because they're already a little bit fuller because, you know, they're holding on to a little bit more water. It's just kind of manipulating the different variables and figuring out what's going to work for them. I know there's not like there's not like a outright just step 1, step 2, step 3, because everyone's body is so different.
That is first I've ever heard. I mean, that's truly amazing, and especially at the work with what you do with your athletes. That is like, wow. I'm like, I've said this before in the past. Like, I've never heard someone win when they have their period. Normally, it just goes the other way. They, you know, have distension or something like that. But that's amazing, Jami. I mean,
I mean, if they're having cramps or if they're having a little bit of bloating, sometimes I'll just have them take an Advil.
Okay.
Simple.
So, do you encourage athletes to keep going in prep, or do you agree to end a season? Let's just say if they're getting like 2nd to 5th, they're like right there to win. Do you kind of say let's keep going for the win, or you kind of come to agreement with them and say, I think it's best to end the season? You know, I feel like you're tired. When do you decide that it's the right time?
I mean, it would really depend on 2 things: their mindset and how their body's responding. So, like I'll say Deanna, when she won Sasquatch last year, I mean, we had done quite a few shows at that point, and she was kind of like, I'm kind of like getting to that point. I'm like, okay, well, let's do Sasquatch. Let's, then we can go ahead and end it. If we need to, we'll shut it down. And it was really, her body was responding great. She was eating plenty of food. She wasn't doing any cardio. We were basically doing a step goal at that point. But it just, first of all, I mean, there's also the money. You're
Yeah.
traveling. You're taking time away from maybe your job or your family. So all of those factors, factor in. Some people have the finances and it's not a big deal. They can, do as many shows as they want, or, but other people have to really budget and figure out, or they have kids, they can't take time away. So it really depends on the individual, what's going on in their lives. But like I said, most of the athletes I work with, by the time we've done our first show, we're titrating down cardio. I mean, by the time we're 2 or 3 shows, they're not doing any. It's usually like a step goal, maybe 8, 9K or something like that, which is pretty much what you do in an improvement season anyway. They're usually eating, 2,000 plus calories anyway. So it's pretty rare that they even ask me to shut it down. It's it's most of the time it's because of either finances,
Yeah.
you know, spouses are like, okay, enough. Like, I want to go on vacation or spend time with you, or, those kinds of things. And I respect those things. I mean, if it's time and it's, that person needs to take a break, then we take a break. If they feel great, they're healthy, everything's going well, and they want to keep going, we keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say this. I really loved Deanna's fortitude last season because I felt like she knew she was going to qualify. And I was like, and I told her in a message, like, I know you tried to qualify in 24, but look at the best thing that didn't happen is the best thing that did happen, because now you're set up for next year and now you have a whole year to improve for that. And you being a former Miss USA, and you have great genetics for Bikini. And I definitely think that whatever she does next, she's going to be great at. And I definitely think coming this Olympia, she's very more prepared than ever.
Yeah.
But that being said, if you have a client in your, here's another question going to that. If you have a client and it's their first Olympia, it's their first ever big stage, they get nervous and they're probably going, sorry for my language, shit, like, should I be here? Like, I've never seen this stage before. I will tell you, this one athlete who was at the Olympia last year on Saturday, she was like frightened. She's like, I've never seen this many cameras around me in my life. How do you get them to, in that mindset, to calm down and not take the pressure and the stress of a big show like that, especially with the Olympia or the Arnold Classic?
Well, that's a really good question. And I will say, from my own experience, my first Olympia, I literally blacked out. When I went on the prejudging stage, I didn't even do my whole routine. Like, I didn't remember anything that happened. It was so overwhelming when I stepped on that prejudging stage and there was all those, I mean, like, it just was so overwhelming. So I can, first of all, relate to them, which helps. I can come from that place. And the biggest thing I tell them is, listen, this is your first Olympia. This is all about having fun. There's no expectation. Go in it with no expectation. Obviously, you want to put your best on stage, but go and just have fun and have the experience. And the cool thing with us is, because we have such a great, like, camaraderie and teamwork between the other athletes, like, it's cool because our veteran Olympians really support the new Olympians, and kind of like, hang out with them and let them know what to expect. And even I know, we did a podcast with Amy and Jordan after the after the Arnold, because that was Jordan's first Arnold. And Amy was, before she walked out in prejudging, she was like, Jordan, just be prepared. The judges are going to be so close, so close to the stage. Like, it's going to be different than anything you've ever experienced. So she just prepared her mentally. And so when she walked out, she was like, okay, yeah, they're close. I knew that was going to happen. So part of it is, I feel like, me preparing them and letting them know, look, there's no expectations. We're here to have a good time, put our best on stage, get our feedback, and figure out how we keep learning and growing. But then the other part is that support they're getting from the other athletes that have been there before. And it's pretty amazing. Like, even athletes that aren't on the team, like I feel like the ladies really do a good job of being kind and supporting each other. And, I feel like for the most part, it's a good experience. But I mean, they
Yeah.
all do freak out. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's actually funny because I feel like sometimes they freak out more when we do the road to Olympia, because I go with them to the NPC gym, where they go and they get to interview with JM, and then pose with Tyler, and like, they're always, I feel like, more nervous for that. Probably because it's so up close and personal.
Yeah. That makes, I mean, I think it's calming their nerves down, and obviously, like you said, don't have the high expectation to do well. I mean, this is the first big stage you've ever been on, so that's great. That's a great take on that. Um, okay, I have a disclaimer, but I do have to ask you this. What, and I can tell you from my experience as well, and I've had in how do I responded to it. But what was the worst you had a client on? What was the worst PDs you had a client on before, and what did you do in that kind of situation? So I can tell you the worst that I've heard was a girl in bikini on like things something in men's open should take, and she was on diazide for like cutting water, and I was like, I don't know what to do. You should just stop everything. What was the worst you've had? You had a client that came from a previous coach that came to you. What was the worst, and how did you? What was the worst PEDs or stuff they were on, and you're like, whoa.
I see some pretty crazy stuff. Some pretty crazy stuff. I've had people come on Tren, Primo, Mastron, Winstrol. I mean, I've seen people on a cocktail of.
Oh my god.
I actually just took on an athlete this week who, I mean, I saw her and she has so much muscle. She's so hard. She's so dense. She's on Mastron, Winstrol, Anavar, Nolvadex, GH Frag. What else? I mean, I was like, why? Why are you on all these drugs? Like, this is Bikini. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy to me. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate because, you know, you see a lot of virilization in these athletes. I mean, I'll be talking to him on the phone. I could hear it, you know, the one athlete, you know, I could, you know, all of those things. And so I'm always asking them, like, are you getting side effects? You know, sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. I don't know. You know, sometimes I think they're aware, sometimes maybe they're not. I don't know. It's unfortunate because, you know, I mean, there are some athletes that are pushing for all of it too. And I'm like, more is not more.
Yeah. And there's one thing I can tell you from Corey, you know, I'm gonna have her on sooner, but less is more.
Yes.
Like at most, maybe, you know, two things at most. I
Right.
think you've had John Jewett at your Fit Body Summit. He even said it's just Anavar and Primo. That's it.
Yeah.
Even at the Olympia, that's it. They don't need any more than that, and less dosage is much better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I it bums me out because I
Yeah.
feel like sometimes people are, you know, instead of wanting to put in the work, they're wanting to do the drugs, or the coaches don't want to put in the work, you know, correct people's training form and intensity and, you know, get them find something that's going to work so they diet. You know, I mean, gosh, people are, you know, using DMP. Are you kidding me? Like, are you trying to kill somebody? I mean, someone did. People have died.
Yeah.
And I see this, and I just you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
You need to put in the work, you know, use the minimal you got to use, but put in the work. Like, it's really about the foundation of, you know, good training, good nutrition, you know, getting enough sleep, doing the recovery things you need to do, you know, investing in a good body work person. Like, I mean, to me, all of those things are, you know, way more paramount. And obviously, like, getting blood work done, especially if you are going to take
Yeah.
something, make sure that you're taking good care of your health. You know, I mean, I have people coming to me, they're on all these things, they're not taking anything for their liver or kidneys. I'm
In
like,
their heart.
oh my God, some of the blood work I've seen, it would blow your mind. You know, and it's actually funny. I recently saw, you know, some communication online, people, all these coaches, they just want you to spend all this money on blood work and they're just trying to whatever. And I'm like, I literally cannot tell you how many times I've had a natural athlete that I'm working with and I get blood work back and I find out their TPO is super high. You know, maybe they're not full-blown hashis, but now we have an opportunity to change up their diet in a way that maybe will keep them from ever flaring, you know, and no one ever thought to even look at this. So, you know, or I've had people come back that are amazing athletes and their A1C is through the roof. You know, it's like they're pre-diabetic. It's we got to nip this in the bud. Like, but if you don't even know where you are, if you don't have a baseline, like, to me, whether you're an athlete competing or not, you know, I mean, if you walk in and you look like an athlete to a doctor's office, they're not going to test you for anything. They're, oh, you look great. You're healthy. Like, they're not going to test you. it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. I feel like every single person should get a full panel of blood work done once
Yes.
a year. Whether, I mean, my parents, my friends that don't compete, like everyone, I'm like, you need to do this.
I do it, and even any athletes, because it's like I need to know if they have a condition so that I would know what to do and how to assess it and where to go about it. Now, for instance, if someone's like top 5 at nationals or in a pro show, then I will okay, but very little, less is more. That's I always keep preaching that. I'm not
Yeah,
encouraging. I'm just saying, oh, if you want to win, just have a just at most at its essence, Jamie. PEDs give you like 10-15% edge. That's it. It's not all of a sudden going to take me from, and I think I can go on this. Like one girl's like, I got 11th at my first national show out of 45 girls. If I start this and this, can I all of a sudden win it? I'm like, no, you still have to put in the work. Like
right.
if you're from going from 11th to even, I think now top 2 in some of the national shows, like just to get a pro card, it's still a lot of work and time to get into it. And if you're that close, let's say after couple national shows and you're like within that 5th place like distance, then okay, but very little. And then still put in the work, still work on your posing, take your feedback and go back and apply it. I always encourage that.
Yeah,
And I care about women's health. I don't want them to I want people in the long run. I don't want them to do this and then go back and go, bodybuilding ruined my life. And
yeah.
you see
Well,
those kind of things.
my wellness athlete that just competed at the Sampson, Thais, she is, it's funny because when she and I started working together, I'm like, one of the reasons I don't coach as much wellness is because kind of the extreme
Yeah.
some of those things. I'm like, I'm not comfortable with that. And she said, I don't care. I want to be with you. I know you're going to make sure that I, keep my femininity and I stay healthy. She's like, I don't care if that means I take longer, improvement seasons and things like that. And truly, I've been amazed at what we've been able to accomplish without doing anything crazy. Because I hear the protocols that some of the athletes are doing. So it's pretty exciting to see that we've been able to accomplish what we've been able to accomplish. And I really hope to see her on the Olympia stage this year. I think we've got a really good shot at it. But one of the big pieces of feedback I keep getting from all of the judges is how they're like, she looks so feminine. She looks so good. They were like, even when she did her pro debut, she got 5th at her pro debut, which was Republic of Texas. And, I really loved that the judges told her, they were like, take your time. You need size, but take your time. We would rather you take your time and keep this rather than, feeling like you need to do it all and do it all now. And then, kind of destroy,
Yeah.
that
And
aspect.
and that's really good that she wants to be with that versus going with a coach. And obviously they're successful, but the consequences and the side effects of that's really good. And that's awesome what you're doing, Jamie. Let's see. Go to cardio on prep to preserve muscle and drop fat. Is fasted preferred cardio?
No. I mean, um, again, we'll go to the whole it depends. I feel like that's the answer to every single question. If in most cases we're wanting to keep muscle, so I typically will have people do cardio post workout, rather than just fasted. If I'm trying to whittle down legs or something like that, because there are situations where we're dealing with an imbalance, then I might purposely use a little bit of fasted cardio. I mean, we know there's pros and cons to both. I mean, there's been so many studies now that there's they're interchangeable. If I have an athlete that's the only time they can get it in, fine, but it's not a requirement. It's not my go-to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Advice for someone doing their first show as a master's athlete.
I mean, there's not a whole lot different that I would do with a master's athlete than an open athlete. I mean, obviously there's a different, depending on how old they are, there might be a different hormonal profile. I'm a huge fan of, like I said, getting blood work done, utilizing HRT where that makes sense. I mean, me at 55 years old, like I'm prioritizing my hormone health, even though I'm not competing anymore, and making sure that I'm keeping things balanced. So I do think as we get older, that becomes even more important because our natural hormones are declining. But other than that, I think there's a lot of advantages sometimes that the masters athletes have. They might have more years in the gym, more muscle density, the ability to travel and, have a bit more freedom in that regard. So, I mean, it's funny when people ask me that, but I don't feel like even as an athlete, that was competing in my 40s, I didn't really see it as much different than the athletes that were younger than me.
Okay. Here's a good one. This is something Hani Rambod said on his podcast. He says that with so many divisions now, judges should be more specialized to certain divisions. Do you believe in that? That some judges should be like bikini, wellness, they should be open, they should be classic. Because he said this along the lines like the open men just come off and here's now fit model. Now they got to go with what criteria we go with. Do you feel like, listen, we're not the pro league. This is just a thought that he has. Do you think now with 7 female divisions, 4 men's divisions, they should have like judges more specialized for specific ones?
I definitely think it would be ideal. I think logistically it's challenging, for the
Yeah.
organization. But just like it's the same answer when you asked me about should you have a coach that specializes. My eye for bikini is probably as good, if not better, than most judges because this is what I do every day, all day long. I'm at a show every single weekend, picking apart bikini physiques, talking to judges, seeing what they think, comparing, you know what I mean? Like it's all I do. So certainly whatever you do all the time, you're going to become better at. If I had to coach all divisions, I don't think I would be as good of a coach, and I think the same applies to judges. I mean, we have so many divisions now with different criteria, and you've got to hone your eye for every single one of those. I definitely think it's very challenging. I think the judges have their work cut out for them. It certainly would make life easier on them if they were focused on a division or on certain divisions, or even, I don't know how they would do it,
Yeah.
because I mean, especially when you have, like, let's say one of like Tim Gardner's show where he's got all the different divisions at a show, you're going to have to change out judging panels for every single, you know what I mean? I don't know logistically
Yeah.
how that would
It's
work.
hard. It's hard to say because it's like there's not really a good answer for that. It's kind of like maybe that, like I said, that's tough to say. Maybe like, okay, for instance, Tyler's really good with the female division. Steve's good with the more muscular divisions. Kind of like that's kind of how I would see it as
Yeah. And then
if it was a
like,
Tim Gardner show.
the head judge,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like if you had a panel of all the judges and like each one specialized in a different area and the head judge
Yeah.
would be the one, maybe something like that would work. And they kind of do that at the Olympia. I mean, because you have Sandy usually on the microphone for the women, and then you have Steve usually on the microphone for the men.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just a proposition. I think it's a good idea, but like I said, that's going to be hard to logistically do.
But in a perfect world, I think it would be great.
Yeah. What would you say for someone who wants to coach work with Fit Body Fusion someday?
I mean, it's a good question. I do get a lot of requests for people to coach for the team, and typically the way we go about it is, when we get to a point where okay, now we're at a point that we need a new coach. I mean, I do coach a lot of coaches. So the cool thing about that is I really get a chance to get to know them. How serious and compliant are they with their own program? What do their athletes look like? And, how do they go about things? What's their level of knowledge when they're communicating with me? So it's almost like an interview in a way. So a lot of the people that I've brought on as coaches, that's why I brought them on as coaches, because I was so impressed with them. For us, culture is huge. We've had turnover with coaches, and a lot of times that's been more culture related than anything. They're more lone wolf sorts of people, and less, team oriented, like work together sort of people. So to me, it's really important that our coaches support each other. We have educational calls every week. We have office hours calls every week where our coaches will bring up different athletes. We'll go over different shows, who won, why, what, all these different things we're constantly doing, and they'll help each other. Even though everybody's got different strengths, they're always willing to like literally jump in there and give a different perspective or give some information, maybe something they've studied or read or experienced with another person. To me, that's super important. So, I mean, that's really the people I look for. I look for the people that, don't just have the technical knowledge, but have the experience and then also, fit our culture.
Yeah. I think you signed a coach who's actually my teammate on J Crew coaching, Tommy Nguyen.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, is he coaching females or more the men's side?
He mostly coaches the men's side. He does have some
Okay.
females, but
Okay.
I mean, there obviously we have some crossover, but I really do like females coaching females and males coaching males. But I mean, obviously Drew coaches a lot of females, and we do have some crossover. But it's I know a woman's body because I have a woman's body, so I do. I feel like it's just a different perspective. But there's some unique guys out there that do such a fantastic job with the ladies too.
Yeah. Um, let's see. We answered that already. How does Jamie take care of herself while taking care of so many others?
That's a challenge. It's actually so funny because I feel like by the end of last year, I looked so haggard. And it was really funny because when I got to the Arnold, so many people were like, wow, you look so good. Did you have something done? You look so refreshed. I'm like, no, I just actually got enough sleep and like actually got a little bit of downtime. I definitely do put my athletes first. I'm like, if they look good, I don't care what I look like. So if you see me at a show sometime with my ponytail, they make fun of me. I put my ponytails off to the side like I'm in the 80s and I got no makeup on. And, I just threw something on. It's really all about them. That's just where I come from. But I'm definitely working on making sure that I'm doing those little things to take care of myself. Like I said, I mean, I get my blood work done regularly. I make sure I'm keeping my hormones balanced. I use a meal prep company, so I make sure I'm eating good, healthy meals throughout the day. Show weekend, I may or may not eat. It just kind of depends on what's going on at that time. But I'll have like my purse full of like almonds and, a protein bar or whatever, so that hopefully, and I've gotten better with water because that was a big issue last year, drinking enough water. But it's actually cute because my athletes a lot of times will take care of me too. Cause they're like, have you eaten? Have you had any water? Like, what are you doing? They'll bring me coffee in the morning or whatever. Cause they know, sometimes I mean, God, there was one show weekend I was up for 36 hours. That was actually the Masters Olympia weekend because I had 4 in Romania. I had a few in at the Japan Pro, and then I was at, I think it was the Clash that weekend, and we won the Japan Pro. I had 2 out of the top 4 at the Masters Olympia, and several placed at the show I was at, but I didn't sleep for literally 36 hours. I was like, this is rough. And I was so excited this year because the Masters Olympia I liked the weekend it was, and then they just moved it. So now it's on a 4 pro show weekend.
Yeah, they have they have the regional amateur, they have the masters, and then Sunday's the pro show for the open.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's going to be interesting, but I'm excited for it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is, I mean, the way you manage it is you do it very well. And one thing I actually wanted to mention is this from Greg that you're disciplined like that? Like you're very committed. You know how you have that diagram in the hotel room with the studio light? I told Jordan Brandon this, like that's commitment, that's discipline. Is that something that you've just always had or something you learned from Greg from him being in the military?
Oh, I mean, I'm a very driven, disciplined person. I probably from my dad to start with. My dad was an amazing entrepreneur. I got to watch him make millions, lose millions, make millions, lose millions. I mean, over and over and over because he just is so driven and so amazing. And to go from the top to the bottom and the top, it gave me a perspective on life and on hard work and drive and what's possible if you're willing to dedicate yourself and work hard. So I think a lot of I'll credit my dad for a lot of my work ethic and organizational skills. And the last company that my dad built, we did it together. So getting to do that, build a company that we ended up selling to a Fortune 50. I actually retired after that and went on an Eat, Pray, Love little trek over. I went to India and studied yoga, and I did all these different things. I always have to be doing something, learning something. But then, of course, marrying Greg, he fits right in with all of that. Being an attorney, being a colonel in the Army, retired colonel, full bird colonel. He's amazing. We are just an incredible team. Today I got a little overwhelmed because I had a lot going on, and I'm like, hey, can I give you these things? And he was like, done, got you. He's amazing. And now, of course, with Drew, he's come on board and kind of been the kind of completed everything. It's been really, to me, again, like, it's surrounding yourself with people that, that are aligned, that are hardworking, that are dedicated and passionate. I feel like that's what's helped me become, who I've been. I watched my dad build teams in all these companies and surround himself with the best people possible. It wasn't an ego thing. It wasn't about me. It's about us. You can never grow as much as an individual as you can as a team. So
yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's not, I was thinking militant, like that's very militant. Like obviously your father is, your parents raised you very well. And I gotta say, it really shows how you translate that to your athletes as well, being like disciplined and committed. I gotta commend you, Jami, on that.
thank you.
I have a couple more and we're almost done. So I'm trying to take your time. I know you're gonna go to Charlotte this weekend.
Yes, I'll be at
Okay.
Charlotte.
So I won't take your time. I don't know when your flight is. But
No, I'm not leaving till Thursday, so you're good.
okay. What are the top 3 training mistakes?
Gosh. Top 3 training mistakes. I would say a lot of times people are throwing up too much weight rather than focusing on form. I'll catch my athletes doing this sometimes because they'll tag me in things on Instagram, and like, they're got 6 plates on each side and they're hip thrusting. And Drew actually was talking about this because, he'll pull up like a male bodybuilder doing like 2 plates or 3 plates. And he's like, why are you guys doing this? Like your form is garbage. Like you're not actually hitting the muscles you need to hit. So I think, that's a big part of it, is understanding how to train properly. And then, not just throwing weight around. It's not about just, momentum and pushing as much weight as you can. We want to make sure the mind muscle connection is there. Really going into the gym and with purpose and focus. I think that a lot of times people, you have the people that want a different, and I'm sure you see this all the time, they want a different program every 4 to 6 weeks. You don't need it.
Yeah.
You're just even starting to master the program at that point. You need to be progressively overloading at that point. It's not time, it's like, oh, but I'm bored. Well, you want to be successful in the bodybuilding stage, then you need to get bored. I mean, because it's about repetition, consistency, doing the same things over and over again, but not checking out, not just going through the motions, actually like really thinking, focusing. You should be mentally tired when you walk out of the gym because you were so focused on making sure that you're, doing things correctly. And so, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is I feel like people just want to go in and go through the motions and get out of there, or, they want it to be fun and interesting rather than realizing, like, for our pro athletes, we tell them, this is your office. When you go into the gym, that's your office. You're a professional. Like, every day when a person, doing any kind of job goes into the office, they're not going to have fun doing it every day, or it's going to get bored and monotonous sometimes, but you still got to do it to the best of your ability.
Yeah, you think about it like, bodybuilding is kind of boring, but you have to find ways to like yourself to think about what's the reward at the end. And that's the fun part. I don't want to say the fun part is what people I see in the gym, like for instance, the bands on the bench, like I get the idea, but it's not always practical, or like they'll learn this nuance of like this influencer, like I created this exercise. I'm like, you really think about it. Training's not changed in 40, 50 years.
They're like, they got this bands on and all these different things. Like, no, let's get to basics. Let's master like the movement. And I would say, like, because you asked me for 3, one of the other ones is a lot of what we see is, especially with, certain bikini wellness, these athletes where we're constantly arching, pushing back in our poses. A lot of times they're doing this in the gym rather than, aligning the spine and having everything,
Yeah.
properly tucked, aligned, and all of those things. So that's the other thing we see a lot. It's kind of those imbalances that transfer over from posing. Again, it's just really learning how to do things properly.
Yeah. All right. So, what are 3 actionable habits athletes cannot compromise for success?
Habits so say it again.
What is the top 3 actionable habits that cannot compromise on for success? I don't know if that's a good question. This one
I mean,
has.
habits that you can't compromise on. I mean, sleep, making sure that you are getting enough rest. If you're not recovering, you're not going to grow, you're not going to progress. I have such a great example of this. I had a client at one point, and she was one of these people that could not stop moving. I mean, she was just doing so many things, so many things. And we got to this place where she wasn't dropping, things weren't happening. And I keep telling her it's because you're not sleeping. And finally I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. If you don't get 8 hours of sleep, you're not allowed to train. You're not allowed to do cardio, because for 1 week, your number one and only priority is 8 hours sleep. It had been like probably 4 to 6 weeks of her not dropping. She dropped 4 pounds that week, so I definitely feel like sometimes people underestimate the importance of sleep and of recovery. So I would say that's definitely one. I mean, obviously nutrition. I mean, if you're going to half-ass your nutrition plan, you're not going to get results. When people, and I'm sure you hear this, people will come and go, okay, how much time do I need to get on stage? And one of the big things I say is, like, it depends on how compliant you are. I mean, if you give
Yeah.
me 2 weeks of compliance and then the third week you go out, drinking and partying with your buddies and you set us back 2 weeks, we literally just undid all the work we just did, so, that's really important, is that, what are you putting in your body? Are you being consistent with your nutrition? And I mean, certainly, consistency with training, and going in and really understanding. I mean, if somebody doesn't know how to train properly, like, invest. And I've even told people, if people have been working with me for coaching and they don't know how to properly train, I'm like, take a break from coaching and go hire a trainer and go master this stuff and then come back to me. And I've done the same thing, honestly, with blood work. If people are like, I can't afford to get my blood work done, I'm like, put your account on hold with me, go get your blood work done, and then come back, and then let's go from there. Because, there are priorities over and beyond. Like, if your only priority is getting on stage, then you're going to skip over all the steps that are going to actually make you successful, in the long run. So I think that I gave you 4, but
No, that's great. This person, she asked for 3, she got 4. That's
you got
awesome.
4 bonus.
um, okay, last one is, let's see. You kind of answered that. What is something you wish all athletes took more seriously? I don't know if you kind of answered that. What is something Jami wishes all athletes took more seriously?
I mean, to give something new, their posing and their stage presence and routine on stage. A lot of times I think athletes will wait till the last minute to work on it. And then it just, and I'm sure you've seen it. Like, there's so many times, it might even be an athlete, that isn't on our team, or whatever. And you'll see them, you're like, oh my gosh, they have such an amazing physique, but they just don't know how to show it properly.
Yeah.
That's always makes me sad. Like, especially when you'll see like a men's physique or a figure athlete and they didn't practice. So they don't know that they're not opening their lats because they just didn't practice it enough. And they have this beautiful taper when they get it open, but then they'll be in the comparisons, and they're like, half the time they won't, and they'll get moved out. So I definitely think, like, starting to pose early, dedicating that time, you gotta look at all areas of your craft and make sure that you dialing them in.
Yeah. One thing I always make the analogy is Stanley Kubrick with The Shining. They did that one scene 120. You know that scene with the bat? I don't know if you remember that movie with Jack
I
Nicholson.
remember the movie, but I don't remember the scene with the bat.
That they did that one scene 127 times till everyone got it right. If
Wow.
something was off, they do it again. And that's one thing I would say with posing. You're gonna pose until you get it right, until like you can outlast everybody that you go up against. It's like that's very crucial. Also, I always say you have to have confidence in yourself, because if you're not confident in yourself, how could judges be confident in rewarding you for the win? You have to believe that when you're on that stage, you're gonna you whatever you brought, that was your best, and you believe that you can win. A third one is come out with like energy, and also makeup. I'll tell you a story about makeup. So I had a client ask me, she's an amateur, who's doing makeup at the show? Do you know? And I said V, because there was a pro show going on as well as the amateurs, and she was pretty much booked out, and they only had one time slot available, and that was 4 a.m. I was like, I was like, okay, well, you might as well take that one because that's all there's left. And then I called her back, like, did you get your makeup done? It's like, no, I didn't go. I'm like, what? It's like, I didn't want to wake up that early. And my show's at 1. And I'm like, first of all, you're not committed. You came in to look your best and present your best. And she does a good job. The makeup that she did wasn't that bad, but when I looked at other girls, I was like, that could have been done better. So it's like, one thing is, I always say you have to be committed to this. When you're working with any athlete, when you work with any coach, me, you, any coach, you have to be committed to doing this. You're not just, well, I'm just going to just go by. No, you're in this show. You put time, money, and energy into it and work. You're going to have to show up like you're in this to win it, regardless of the result. You're in it to look at your best. If you didn't want to bring your best because you didn't do one thing that was crucial to your element of success, then you're not going to be successful at this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, at the end of the day, if you've got two physiques and they're up on stage, and one just has their hair and makeup and their polish is just on, and the other one doesn't, it may even have like a slightly better, that might be the thing. If the judges are trying to pick and that's what's off, that could be the difference. I mean, we see it happen. So, like you said, especially if you want to go far in the sport, the devil's in the details. You got to pay attention to the details.
Yeah. Well, Jami, I thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate everything, and I hope to meet you. Are you going to Pittsburgh? You're going to be at Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah, I'll be at Pittsburgh. I'm actually going to be there the whole week because we're going to do a road to Pittsburgh early in the week. So I get in, I think, on Sunday or Monday, and then I'm there for the entire week. So
yeah. Also, I'm hoping to go to the Indy Pro for Jamie Sterling's show. That's awesome. I thank you so much for coming on. I got to learn a lot about you, and also I'm happy that our audience here gets to learn from you and from your experiences and what they can learn from your wisdom. And you've been coaching now for the past 10, 20 years now? 10?
Gosh, yes. 2011 was when I incorporated Fit Body Fusion. So 14 years, and I was coaching before that. So probably been coaching about 15 years. And I want to say, I really appreciate everything you do. Like, you really go above and beyond to, help bring attention, education, like, just, you do some really nice things. And so I'm really happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
I just want, when I started the whole thing, I have some jokes here and there, and talking about the shows, talking about what's going on. I just kind of feel like there was something missing in Bikini, but I didn't want to just make my thing all about Bikini when I had guests on. I kind of wanted people to learn from them, because I've learned if you're just only all about Bikini, you're gonna die. Bring substance, and that was one thing that I've learned from my mentor, was like, bring substance, tell people about your experience, share with someone's path, that what took them to get to where they are today. People will see like a highlight on like an IG reel, or someone accomplished something so fast, but they're like, what did it take for them to get to where they are and be successful? Like, I can tell you right now, Amy, and people think I have a thing for Amy, like, she's bringing traction to the division. She's inspiring this next generation of Bikini competitors. Like, they're women, and they're starting out in their 30s, and they're moms, and they look at Amy and like, that's who I want to look like. That's who I want to be. There are girls in other countries that don't speak English that want to look like her. And that tells you, like, if that's the physique and that's the role model, that's who they want to be. And she went just like a lot of people starting out. She had shows where she was 6th, 8th. I think one show she didn't place, and she just gradually got better because she kept putting in the work. And if people saw that, then they'll go, oh, so it took time. It wasn't just happen. She had success with a couple years, but what it took from her as an amateur, winning USAs, and then to what she is today, it's not an easy path, especially in her own personal life. But I actually wanted to bring value to seeing, like, hey, everybody goes through things. Everybody has the challenges and adversities in their life. And, success doesn't come like what's it? I don't know how to describe it. Like success doesn't come easy. It success comes from, failures. You didn't fail because you didn't win. Failures because you didn't apply yourself and didn't learn how to get better from that. And if you just applied yourself and took what you learned and from the judges' feedback and come back better, you may win. You may win the overall.
Yeah,
That's kind of
absolutely.
what I wanted to bring into
I
this.
agree. I love, and I see that. I see that in you. I mean, I tell people sometimes, the first 3 years of me starting this team, I didn't pay myself a dime. I invested everything back in because I love bodybuilding. I love this industry. I want to give back. During COVID, like I sponsored shows just to help them. Like I had one show promoter say, "Hey, there's the only way I can put on the show is if you help." And I love people that give back because they're passionate about the industry. And so I appreciate that and I see that in you. So
Thank you so much, Jamie. You take care. Good luck this weekend to all your athletes. I'll catch you soon. All right.
all right, have a great
Take
day.
care.
Okay.